Hey people, it's EpicAlex95, and I recently finished watching Erased, also known as Boku Dake ga Inaimachi, and I saw that recently Digibro made a video named Erased Was Never That Good, and as you can see, maybe you, or maybe you can't, but can you spot that, butthurt on the dislike ratio there? I know it's really hard to spot that butthurt there. But basically, he made a bunch of points about the series that I agree with, and I was going to make a video prior to that actually probably covered a lot of his points, and I might still cover a few of the points and go more in depth with those points that he had in the video. But I just kind of want to talk about Erase and my thoughts on it, and just people's opinions on it in general. But basically, what I thought of the series is that initially when I started watching the show, I boarded the hype train like everyone else. I was like, "Oh my god, this is going to be the most amazing thing I've ever watched!" Like, because I when I initially watched it, I was like, "Okay, this is pretty cool. I like the whole revival concept and everything." You know, I really enjoyed Steins Gate. Steins Gate was one of my favorite animes, and I think a lot of people who like me really enjoyed Steins Gate were really looking forward to this show, and it had a similar premise in some ways, you know. But that's also what I think is what brought this show to a lower quality than what it could have been. It basically took a plot that has already been done before in better ways, you know, Steins Gate, but also like Higurashi and stuff like that, you know. It's basically like, oh, well, I'll use time abilities to save my friends, you know. But you know, one of the problems I had with the show is that one of its labels is a thriller, and the problem with it is that the pacing of the show itself, I don't think was a really good pacing for a thriller show. It didn't really know, I think, the actual concept of a build-up. And I really love that term in the whole idea of thrillers and everything. I love hearing that term used when it comes to thrillers because one of the things I loved about Steins Gate is that it built up, and you could, yes, people claim the first half of the show to be boring, but I would claim otherwise because it had interesting characters. I really liked the writing in the show, and it built up, and it made me care about what the characters were going to go through later on in the show, as well as Higurashi. I thought the pacing in the visual. I read the first visual novel, and I thought the pacing in the visual novel was slightly better than the show. But in Higurashi, I really enjoyed the build up, at least in the visual novel, because there is a build up in the first arc. There's this build up. You know, everything starts off lighthearted, then things start getting slowly more intense. You know, it takes this kind of shining route where it just slowly builds up, and I really, really, really love that. It's just what I like to see in a thriller. But with Erased, the pacing was all over the place. Like, I feel like some of the thriller effects in it were just kind of like cheap and everything. Like, they just, they, like Digibro stated, there's a lot of obnoxious sound effects that I remember they threw in the first few episodes, and I was kind of like, okay, that's just, you're just trying to add this kind of almost artificial layer of intensity in the show that I just didn't really like. But also, like, I feel like I don't want to. And if you truly enjoyed this show, I actually don't want to take that away. This is just my personal opinion. I want to emphasize that this is my opinion, because yeah, no. But honestly, I didn't think it's better than some of the other really shock value-y stuff that you see in other anime. It just kind of, it disguised itself as a more mature and just, yeah, like as a more mature anime than, like, other shock value-y things that you will see in anime. And you can argue it's like, oh, well, you like Higurashi, you like your shock value. But I would really highly question if you watched all of Higurashi, if if you think I watched it just for the shock value, because there's much more to that show than shock value. You've just exposed yourself to what some fan uploaded on YouTube of some really edgy death scene, of Rika stabbing herself in the head or some stuff like that. But within Erased, they kind of disguised it a little bit more, but I felt like there's still some pointless abuse and violence sometimes that really didn't get explained well enough. That it's kind of just why is that happening? Especially with 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 Kaio's mother, it just felt like it just didn't. It felt like it was kind of just your average shock value material, and yeah, no. Again, this is just my opinion, and you can disagree with it all you want. And I'm not saying I'm right either. I don't think I'm objectively correct. Like I said, it's just my opinion. But yeah, no, I just thought it was kind of shock value-y at points. But also, some points, when people claim Steins Gate is boring, I kind of that just seems a bit strange to me, because when I watched Boku Dake ga Inaimachi, I just thought the pacing could be actually quite boring. That was even more boring because the characters themselves, they were boring, and you could go on about the argument how you think that, oh, but you think they're boring, but they're really realistic. They're realistic, and that's where I have to say no. I do not think they're realistic. And don't get me I actually think the characters in Technolize are more memorable than the characters in this show, and yeah, you can go ahead and think I'm crazy about that, crazy for that idea. But the thing is, in Technolize, yes, the characters they seem they almost seem lifeless in some ways. They seem almost boring. But the thing is, it makes more sense. It's believable for the world they live in. In this world of Erased, it just doesn't make as much sense. They all feel over dramatic about things and just too serious. And if that counts as realistic, because in real life, what I experience, a lot of people are real. I know some really interesting characters in real life, so I really don't buy the argument that they're realistic. But yeah, in Steins Gate as well, the characters were honestly, in my opinion, just a lot more interesting. And yeah, you could go on about how they're not realistic. But again, like I said, I know some eccentric characters in real life. So to state that those people are not possible in real life, I just can't. I don't buy that. So yeah, that's just one of my other points. And yeah, no, again, one of the problems I actually did have from the beginning, I actually did have an issue with this show from the beginning, and that's because I thought Satoru, his character felt a little over dramatic at the beginning, and I was kind of like, why am I supposed to care? It feels like this is already establishing itself as a real a show that's going to be real feelsy, and honestly, that is one thing I feel like that just shouldn't be done, is establishing yourself immediately off the bat as a feelsy show. You need to work for those feels, I find. You can't just introduce some oh, I feel so bad for this character because they're getting violently abused, and Oh, this is terrible. I'd want to cry. Cry if you didn't cry when Aaron's mom died in Attack on Titan, then you're heartless. Just that kind of deal. Ah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. I am going on a little bit of a rant here, and yeah, no, you don't have to agree with me on any of this. This is just my personal rant about a race. I just feel like talking about it. But what was I going to say? Another thing is the fantasy genre. This show is also labeled fantasy, and I have to say, one of the things when it comes to, I prefer science fiction over fantasy, and that's my own personal preference. Like, I totally get it if you like fantasy over science fiction, but I like science fiction over fantasy, and here's the reason why. I think that science fiction allows more of the time to have more rules for a universe than fantasy does. And I think this is one case for it, because this is labeled fantasy. And if you look at the time travel mechanics in the show, I just feel like they're kind of time travel mechanics are like not even really explained at all, which just kind of feels a little bit lazy to me. And it, like, usually when something's fantasy, I'm just kind of like, oh no, because sometimes I feel like that can be an excuse to be lazy about writing things, because you can kind of just be like, oh, fantasy, magic, and be done with it and not explain anything else. But, with something with Steins Gate had rules. It was, because, it's a science fiction. You had rules in the universe, in that universe. Things, could only work in certain ways. There were limitations. Even with Higurashi, even in the first season, things might not seem like they have rules. There are rules. You just have to figure them out, and they will be explained later. But there are rules in the Higurashi universe. But, the thing is, with Erased, I didn't really feel like there was really much in terms of rules, because they just established, like, oh yeah, the main character has this revive ability, which you barely get to see anything of in the whole show. And, like, yes, that might seem like a bit of an empty criticism, but I thought it was kind of a cool ability, to go back, like, 5 minutes in time to fix things. And they only, like, showcased it, like, once in the first episode. And then they're like, oh yeah, well, that ability can be used to go back in time all the way to his childhood. And I'm just kind of like, okay then? Really? Okay. And then never show his, like, 5 minute rewind really ever again. And I was actually kind of disappointed by that, because I wanted to see more of that ability. And I wanted to see how it worked, and, like, and why he had that ability. They're just kind of like, oh, he has the ability. He has that ability. He can go back in time. He can do that. It's a phenomenon that affects him. Because fantasy. But anyways, in a show like Steins Gate, there, in a show like Steins Gate, it's just there's specific rules. Like, it can only go back in time a certain amount of time. You have to follow these certain rules, and and they explain, like, maybe some things are better explained in the visual novel, probably, but Steins Gate overall explains the limitations of the world a lot better than a show like this. And it just annoys me to watch a show when it's just like, it's barely any, like, explanation on how the actual world works in the show. But anyways, yeah, I know I've been around it. And also, the main antagonist, I feel like people, yeah, and this is something I've seen people talk about. Well, in the manga, his character's motives are much better explained, but then again, I'm judging this anime by itself. It shouldn't be judged in with the manga. It should be judged by something on its own, I believe. And I just found that the killer's motives in the anime are just not really well explained, and it just didn't really make complete sense to me why he was going around doing that. But I mean, they did explain it a bit. But I was kind of like, okay, cool, yeah, cool, okay. But yeah, no, yeah, I think I might be harsh on the show. I just feel like ranting about it. I actually did kind of like it. It was still a decent show, I think. I just don't think it's good as some people make it out to be. But don't take that as you can like the show all you want. I'm not going to stop you from liking it. This is just my personal opinion. And yeah, no. But anyways, I'm sorry I went on for 15 minutes about that. But anyway, thanks for watching if you stuck through all of this video. And yeah, no, subscribe for more rants like this in maybe the near future. But yeah, no, yeah. Thanks for watching. Bye.